Hello, everybody. I'm Reggie, and I'm here to talk to you guys and have this discussion board on the scenario that we have this week. So, on this scenario, we have a flight from KRIC to KMQI. When I looked it up, I have a nautical mile range of about 123 miles to that destination direct. And in this scenario, we come across an airport where there is a deer on the runway. So, we know that this deer could be a variable scenario which it could vacate the runway. So my first initial considerations would be fuel and weather. Now, if I have limited fuel and possible deterioration of weather, the possibility of potentially circling the airport and waiting for that deer to vacate the runway in a reasonable amount of time may go out the window. So what are our options? Well, based on FAR 61.1, a cross-country flight can be logged when you have a 50 nautical mile in a straight line distance from the takeoff point or airport of origination. So this means, though we weren't able to land at our original airport, that we might be able to land at an airport that's at least 50 nautical miles away from our point of origination, which would still count as cross-country flight. Now, there are some caveats to this. In commercial flight training, there are some flights that require it to be at least 100 nautical miles for it to count as a cross-country flight. This would also be a consideration in what stage of your commercial training you're in, and if this requirement is either a 50 nautical mile or 100 nautical mile journey that you need to be taking. So, like I said, my consideration would be time, distance, fuel, and weather would be my primary things that I'd be worried about. So would I have enough fuel to circle for a while and then land on the runway after the deer is vacated? Or do I not have enough fuel and weather to circle, and should I return back to the airport? Well, I would probably go with the more conservative option of not circling and returning back to my airport of origination. But while returning to that airport of origination, I would actually stop at a airport called Elizabeth, or KECG. This airport is actually 93 nautical miles from our airport of origination. So this, depending on the stage and the type of flight that we're on, should still count as my cross country, and I should be able to log it as a cross country flight. So some decisions that would help me make this decision would initially be my PAVE checklist. So the PAVE checklist, the first two letters are P and A. They stand for pilot and aircraft. Now these requirements must be okay because we wouldn't be able to be taking this flight unless they were already satisfied. Now we have the potential for a bad environment and external pressures. So our environment is already skewed because we know that there's a deer on the runway. But like I said previously, I'd want to know what the environment would look like around me in terms of weather. So I would not detour further south because I am not sure what the weather would look like down there. But I know for sure if I've planned to originally return back to Richmond already, I know that the weather should be good heading back that way. So if I head back to Richmond and stop along the way, I know that the weather will be satisfied. I also know that at KECG, it's a towered airport. So running into a similar situation is highly unlikely, and I'd likely be able to land at that airport. So how would I come to these conclusions? Well, I'd have to do a risk assessment. I'd identify personal hazardous attitudes to safe flight. What are these hazardous attitudes? Well, some examples of this could be impulsivity, invulnerability, and being macho. What are some antidotes or remedies to this? Not so fast, think first. It could happen to me, and taking chances are foolish. Once I identify these hazards, analyze them, and make an informed decision, I'll be able to safely make the right call in both accomplishing the task that I'd like to do and staying safe at the same time. So, managing these external pressures, things to consider is allowing myself extra time and fuel to do things such as this, whether it might be circling or diversion. It also calls for having alternate plans for things such as late arrivals or even potentially landing at somewhere else that's unfavorable. And lastly, one of the big things that I would like to do is avoid the get there-itis. Many of us in flight training are on a time crunch, and a lot of us are trying to accomplish our goals in the best and most efficient ways possible. For many of us, having a flight that is not able to be logged as cross country would take a pretty big hit on us for the week. Being able to set that aside and put into perspective the safety aspect first would be vital. In conclusion, I've decided that I would definitely not continue further south or try to land at that airport. I would make a quick calculation of my time, distance, and fuel, which I should already have because I've already predetermined that prior to this happening, I was going to fly back to Richmond regardless. So I should be able to make that safe flight, which is on the way back to Richmond anyways, to KECG. I would do a touch and go at KECG and then continue on to Richmond for a full stop landing. Thank you for watching my videos. I look forward to watching your videos and learning what you guys might think of this scenario.